And just one entry into the Great British Giveaway really could make £50,000 cash all yours. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, in the last couple of hours, the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has granted a set of locally targeted but nationally backed inquiries into rape gangs. Last week, this was called far right. Well, today, it's Labour policy. Was it enough? Did it go far enough? I'll get full reaction from councillors and activists who've been calling for Labour to act on rape gangs. Britain's shame.
We will introduce
And a balaclava-clad drill rapper who boasts about killing has been exposed as a child murderer, yet his work has been promoted by the BBC. Jake Farry was jailed for life in 2008 for murdering schoolboy Jimmy Mizen. Today, I'm delighted to say I'm joined in the studio by Jimmy's amazing mother, Margaret Mizen, MBE, to get her reaction to this astonishing revelation. Welcome to the show. So Britain's shame of the rape gangs just won't go away, and nor should it. Today, the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper addressed Parliament, offering a set of regionally based investigations, but only in 5 towns, not 50. Only £5 million being offered. As pointed out, Telford cost £8 million alone. And worst of all, in my opinion, there are no statutory powers to compel anybody to turn up. It seems toothless, it seems half-baked, and it doesn't seem to go far enough for the survivors that we've been speaking to on this channel. Does it do enough? Does it go far enough? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. Just after 5 o'clock, the top story tonight. Well, far too little action. That was the Home Secretary's damning verdict as she unveiled a new national-level rapid audit of grooming gangs and new local inquiries. Yvette Cooper has announced tougher sentences, mandatory reporting and expanded investigations to cover recent cases. The government will also support victim-centred local inquiries in Oldham and in 4 other pilot areas.
Despite all those national inquiries, reports and hundreds of recommendations, far too little action has been taken and shamefully little progress has been made. The most important task should be to increase police investigations into these horrific crimes and get abusers behind bars. We will introduce stronger sentences for child grooming, making it an aggravating factor to organise abuse and exploitation. And I can announce new action today to help victims get more investigations and prosecutions underway.
Well, it comes after weeks of pressure on the government for a new national inquiry into grooming gangs, with the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch and even Elon Musk saying local probes aren't enough. The Shadow Home Secretary has also slammed the government's plans, saying it's totally inadequate. Chris Philp says up to 50 towns are affected and questioned why others are being ignored.
Yes, ignored them, and in some cases even covered up these horrendous crimes because of absurd concerns about so-called cultural sensitivity. 10 days ago, the Prime Minister compounded this by saying it was a far-right bandwagon to raise these issues and call for a proper inquiry. Let me say this, it is not far-right to stand up for rape victims.
In other news, a teenager has been found guilty of murdering the 15-year-old Eliane Andam during a row over a teddy bear. Hassan Sentamou stabbed the aspiring lawyer in the neck after stewing over a water-splashing prank just the day before. The court heard the 18-year-old had a history of violence and had brought the knife to the scene. Eliane's family hugged as the jury convicted him earlier of murder, while Sentamou was seen crying in the dock. He'll be sentenced in March, with police praising Eliane's friends and a bus driver who comforted her in her final moments. Speaking outside the Old Bailey earlier, the detective Becky Woodsford said that Eliane was killed for just standing up for her friend and doing what she thought was right.
His claim is that he acted through diminished responsibility, and that was never accepted by the prosecution team. And today the jury agreed and they found him guilty of Eliane's murder. We worked together as a team, and during our investigation we've had the opportunity from Michael and Dorcas and Eliane's family to learn what a bright, funny and happy person Eliane was.
Sir Keir Starmer says the UK will play our part in guaranteeing Ukraine's security after a peace deal as he makes his first visit to Kyiv as Prime Minister. His trip comes as Russian drones were targeting the city, a reminder of the daily threats Ukrainians face. The UK has also unveiled a £4.5 billion military aid package, including cutting-edge air defence systems and training for Ukrainian cadets. The Prime Minister called for peace through strength and warned that weakness could invite more war and embolden aggressors worldwide. And in a historic move, a 100-year UK-Ukraine partnership has also been agreed, cementing ties in defence and technology. The head of England's largest non-metropolitan police force has been suspended today with immediate effect. Thames Valley's Chief Constable Jason Hogg is under investigation by the IOPC for gross misconduct. The investigation's focusing on allegations that Hogg failed to properly investigate the improper retention of sensitive police information. An interim appointment will be made for that role by the end of this month. And good news for commuters. Strikes set for the next 2 Sundays on Avanti West Coast have been called off, but the dispute isn't over just yet. Workers from the RMT union had been gearing up for walkouts over rest day working. But after talks with the rail firm, the union has suspended the strikes to allow for further negotiations. The RMT says the suspension shows their commitment to finding a resolution, but that future strikes are still on the horizon. And just before I hand you back to Martin in Westminster, a breaking line coming to us from the Old Bailey this evening that a neo-Nazi Satanist, Cameron Finnegan, who was 19 years old, has just been jailed for 6 years with an extended licence period of 3. That's after he admitted to encouraging girls to kill themselves and self-harm online. So that news just coming to us from the Old Bailey. Cameron Finnegan, a neo-Nazi Satanist, 19 years old, has been jailed for 6 years. We will take a look at the details for you and bring you more on that later this hour. Now, though, that's the latest on GB News. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Over to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now we have a powerful story here. A balaclava-clad drill rapper who boasts about killing has been exposed as a child murderer, and yet his work, astonishingly, is being promoted by the BBC. In 2008, the day after turning just 16 years old, as you can see on your screens now, Jimmy Mizen and his brother Harry went out to buy a lottery ticket, stopping by a bakery in South London. And that's where Jake Farey murdered Jimmy, viciously attacking him with a glass dish that you can see on your screens now. He was sentenced to life with the minimum term of 14 years, but in June 2023, Farey was released. He's now believed to be drill rapper 10, as you can see on your screens, known for violent lyrics and hiding his identity behind a balaclava. Now let's read out some of those lyrics and a warning that some of the following lines may be disturbing to some viewers. He boasts about, sharpen up my blade, I've got to keep those necessary. Stay alert and kept it ready, any corner could be deadly. Stuck it on a man and watched him melt like Ben and Jerry's. And the Ministry of Justice is now investigating Farey for lyrics referencing to that murder of Jimmy Mizen. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined in the studio by Margaret Mizen, MBE. Margaret, of course, is the mother of Jimmy Mizen and the founder of the Mizen Foundation. Margaret, God bless you for turning up today. It must be a very, very difficult situation seeing this individual on the screens. Can we go back to that day in May 2008, every parent's worst nightmare? Your boy was murdered. Tell us about your memories of that day.
To be honest, Jimmy was really excited. It was the day after his birthday, leaving school on the Monday to start his GCSEs, so he was really excited. And he went round the corner to buy his first ever lottery ticket, went in the local bakery, and Jake Farey came in. He's a very angry young man anyway. It's a big history. And to cut a long story short, because I could sit here all day talking about it, he threw a glass dish at Jimmy, it shattered on Jimmy's neck, and a piece of glass cut through his carotid artery and his jugular vein, embedded itself in his spine. And within 3.5 minutes, Jimmy just bled to death. So Jimmy went out and just never came home again. And yeah, sad.
And you got a phone call?
I got a phone call from a friend, actually, telling me to get round the corner quick because Jimmy was being attacked. And I remember running round there and taking my shoes off to go a bit faster because I couldn't get there fast enough. And there was just all chaos when I got round the corner. And when I got to the bakery, there was blood and glass and sausages absolutely everywhere. And when I eventually saw Jimmy, he was actually in a cupboard. My son Tommy was holding him. And Tommy just said to me, Mum, go back, you'll be OK. But something in me told me he wouldn't. And then, obviously, Jimmy died.
He died on the scene.
Yeah.
Just having gone out for a lottery ticket. Mm-hmm. And life changed for you forever at that point.
Yeah.
And I read an astonishing story. I often am just blown away by the human capacity to forgive. And that's something that you just incredibly have. You spoke at a memorial service for Jimmy's death in 2018, and you talked about forgiveness. Tell us about that and how you got to that point.
What actually happened after Jimmy was killed, we spoke to the press. This was the day after. Now, we'd never been in the papers, on the telly or anything. And I spoke about not being angry because anger breeds anger and bitterness, and I'm not going down that road. We also spoke of the person who killed Jimmy. He wasn't caught, but we did have a rough idea who it was. But after that, the following day, we were headline news saying Barry and Margaret Mizen forgive the boy that killed their son. Well, I've got to be honest, we didn't have time to eat, let alone think of forgiveness. Yeah. But it did give me a chance to think about it. And I realised very soon after Jimmy there was something missing from my life. It was my smile. I'd lost it completely. And I knew that the only way that I was going to bring that back was to start forgiving. So I do forgive the boy. But I think what people need to know is because I forgive him, it doesn't mean to say I want to be his best friend or it doesn't matter what happened to Jimmy. It certainly does. But by forgiving him, it's allowed me to smile, but it's also allowed me to lead this new life that I had to lead because I had to find a way of managing the death of my beautiful son. So I do it through my forgiveness. And I was asked today, you can't possibly forgive now. And my words stay the same, forgiveness, peace and hope. That was a legacy that Jimmy left, and they're the words that I will always use. I won't be beaten by what's happened even today.
OK, I think a lot of people will be blown away by that, me included. But how does it feel when you see those pictures that we just played out of the man who killed your son now sitting on supercars with a balaclava on, tattooed, rapping away, clearly making a living from this. Out, life, he was jailed for life. He wasn't jailed for life. He was out after 15 years. Your boy was 16. He served less time than your boy was alive. Is that justice?
Well, we can often say, what is justice? You know, after Jimmy was killed, people said, what is justice? And do you know, for me, justice was the truth about Jimmy coming out. You know, when we went to court, I wanted the truth about him because the defence tried to say that Jimmy wasn't even a good boy, and we knew he was. But when we got the verdict of guilty, I got my justice. So I have justice. But even so, you know, we can look at all these things, but I think, you know, 15 years, maybe he'll end up back in now. Who knows?
Bringing us on to this point about him making money out of being a rapper, and more to the point, the lyrics there, he's been accused of using the death of Jimmy, glorifying the death of Jimmy in his drill videos, and more than that, he's been promoted by the BBC as an artist who really stands out. What's your opinion on the BBC backing this murderer, this thug?
I'll just go back to that last question where you said about how do I feel. I think I'm still in a bit of a mode of this isn't real that's going on. It doesn't feel real, and I think I'm still a bit numb by what has come out since yesterday. But I don't know. How do I feel about it? I think it's absolutely beyond disgraceful. I can't believe that the BBC would do this. Now, I know that at the moment they're saying, well, they didn't know who he was, etc. But there must be ways of looking at these things. You know, perhaps people show their passports with a name or something, but they're making excuses. There's no excuses. They played his music, and you're playing the music of someone who's committed murder. I think it's disgraceful.
Not only playing music of a murderer, but specifically using what he did to your lad as content.
So perhaps he would say, well, actually, I'm not using Jimmy's story. We know he is, but he could say that. But there was one bit in the music, and it said about, it was when he was in court that he lied. Well, he actually did lie in court. He went into the witness box and he spoke and he did lie. So we do know he's talking about Jimmy. But my Jimmy is too precious to let someone like Jake beat us. And so he can say what he likes. I'll still be way above him. He's not going to beat me down with these words. I'm going to do my best to stop these kind of things. I think the BBC need to certainly come up with a plan to stop it. And I think we need to find out from the Justice Department what they're prepared to do, because Jake is on licence at the moment. Has he broken his licence? I think he probably has, actually.
I mean, if he's using a murder he committed, and here's another point you mentioned, to further his own career, is there perhaps a grotesque notion here? He might be using the death of your son to boost his career, to make money.
Well, absolutely. And do you know what worries me is all the publicity he's getting at the moment.
Yeah.
Could that actually boost his career? Does he feel he's just going to be a celebrity? And there's that possibility, and that's something that really worries me. And I urge anyone listening who might even think they want to follow him, please don't make him into the celebrity, because that's the one thing that would really break me, I think, to have that celebrity status, because that's what he wants.
And I wonder if this kind of music is talked about so often. We saw a lad on a bus in Woolwich. You know, again, you're a South Londoner, just down the road in Woolwich. Yeah. A 14-year-old kid stabbed to death on a bus in broad daylight. He'd been one of these drill rappers. Does any good come of this sort of music, particularly when you know it's being used by murderers to glorify what they did and stomping on the memory of your beautiful boy?
Of course, it's not doing any good. It's far from doing good, and I really worry about our young people, because they're so vulnerable, some of them, and they see this and they think it's glamorised, etc. So absolutely, it's the worst thing possible. What they're saying, the words, absolutely abhorrent. I can't believe that we would allow it, and I can't believe that any radio station, BBC or any other, would play something so bad. So something needs to be done, without a doubt.
Have the BBC reached out to you and apologised?
No, I don't want to criticise them too much now, because maybe they'll come to me, but at the moment they have done nothing. All I've seen put out is They only played 2 of these songs and they didn't have the words about Jimmy and etc. and knife crime. It's unacceptable, isn't it? So I'm hoping they will reach out to me, but well, I'll have to wait and see.
Will that be enough for you? They're platforming a murderer. They're claiming they didn't know. They're claiming that they didn't put the full uncensored version out, but you can get that version online. They are acting as a marketing platform for a killer. Is an apology enough?
I don't think an apology alone is enough. For them to say we're going to start looking at this and to see if we can make it better, that would help, most definitely. But an apology, well, we can all apologise, can't we? It's not going to really make much difference. But they need to do something. We all need to do something. Our children are precious. This shouldn't be like this.
May I ask you one final question, Margaret?
Yeah.
Again, I'm absolutely blown away by your capacity and your ability to forgive. And I'm getting emotional just seeing a picture of your lad on the screen now. Has your capacity to forgive been tested by this latest incident?
Not at all. It's made me more determined than ever to work for forgiveness, peace and hope. And I absolutely say the words as I've always said them, and it will make no difference to me. I carry on.
Margaret Mizen, I think you're an astonishing person. I honestly do. I don't know how you do it.
Oh, I'm not. I'm just a mum.
OK. Got a comment to read out here before I get going. Now, the BBC have said decisions on music are made case by case. We have strict editorial guidelines in place before any content is broadcast or posted. BBC One Extra does not glamorise violence. And a spokesperson for HM Prison and Probation Service has said this: "We are aware of this content and are investigating it as a priority. We take any material that could glorify violence or distress victims extremely seriously." Margaret Mizen, MBE, before I let you go, do those apologies satisfy you? Those statements?
No, not from the BBC, no, because they're making excuses. From the Victims Service, I think they've only just found out about it, so they are looking into it. And as long as they do investigate properly, then I'll be satisfied with that one. But the BBC, no.
OK, Margaret Mizen, I hope they do reach out and apologise. That's the least you deserve. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh.
Again, I'm blown away by you.
Thank you very much.
God bless. Thank you. Now, moving on. Labour bows to pressure to announce new grooming gang inquiries, but are they good enough? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast every day from 6 a.m.
According to a report from the RAC, many drivers see speed limits as a target rather than anything else. More than 50% of us think it's acceptable to break the speed limit.
So this morning we're asking, is it time to increase the motorway speed limit?
Let's talk to automotive journalists Danny Kelly and Steve Fowler. Gents, what a pleasure to speak to you both in one go.
I think we should join many countries in the European Union that have 130 kilometres speed limit, which is around about 81 miles an hour. I drive to London on a weekly basis, and I think the roads are capable of handling higher speeds. I think unofficially the speed limit, without getting pulled over by the local police at the time, is probably around about 78, 80 miles an hour. If a Bobby's on the motorway doing 70 miles an hour, he wants you to overtake him. He wants the free-flowing of that motorway to continue.
So should we change 70 miles an hour? You know, if people are going 80 miles an hour, just stick to 70 miles an hour as a limit. Yes, you know, it's funny when you're driving along the motorway and there's a police car going at 70 and nobody wants to overtake. But if the average is 80, just leave it at 70.
All the gantries now are fitted with the modern signage where they can change the limit at will. We all know that. It's hard to get up to 70 half the time. So, actually, we could apply those rules, couldn't we, at 80 or even 90 miles an hour and say, well, if the weather's bad, let's reduce it. If the fog's bad, let's reduce it.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I hate to use this phrase, smart motorways, but they're the ones where you have the adjustable limits. They don't cover all of the motorway network, relatively small amount of the motorway network. It is a limit. You know, it's not a target, as I keep saying to my kids. God, they're bored of me saying that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:24 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now to the story shaming the nation, of course. That's the rape gang scandal. And the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, this afternoon announced a new national-level rapid audit of grooming gangs, plus up to 5 new local inquiries. Let's remind ourselves of what she had to say earlier on in the Commons.
Despite all those national inquiries, reports and hundreds of recommendations, far too little action has been taken. And shamefully little progress has been made. The most important task should be to increase police investigations into these horrific crimes and get abusers behind bars. We will introduce stronger sentences for child grooming, making it an aggravating factor to organise abuse and exploitation. And I can announce new action today to help victims get more investigations and prosecutions underway.
Well, joining us now is the man who's been driving this conversation globally, of course. That's GB News' national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, welcome to the show. For those of us who were hoping for a full, transparent national inquiry with absolute power to jail anybody who's shamed the nation historically, we were very, very let down today. 50 towns, of course, that you've highlighted were on the radar for rape gangs. Only 5 of those were addressed today, and it seems little or no legal teeth to actually compel and demand people turn up in courts. Charlie, I know you speak to survivors. What's their reaction been to today's announcement by the Home Secretary?
Well, there's no national inquiry as demanded by so many that GB News has been hearing from, but there is a clear shift in tone. That's been obviously detected in how the government has been resisting calls for an inquiry for the last 2 weeks under significant pressure, which has demonstrably adjusted their position. But survivors have said that clearly it doesn't achieve what they were hoping for, which is first and foremost those statutory footings with the inquiries so that people are compelled to give evidence, as you say, Martin, for historic but also ongoing failings. Because for survivors, there's no such thing as historic child abuse. You always live with the pain of what's occurred. They prefer to say rather non-recent when discussing issues that have occurred in decades prior. But yes, the reaction has been quite severe, particularly from survivors from Oldham that we've been speaking to. Several survivors there after meeting with the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips. To be clear, the start of this scandal re-erupting into the media was when 2 weeks ago we revealed that Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips has said that it was up to Oldham alone to decide how to take forward their review. That position has now shifted because the government is now going to support that Oldham inquiry with a Telford-style inquiry supported with government funding. But there's also a few other announcements here. A rapid audit led by the Dame Louise Casey that will start imminently, the Home Office says. That's going to be crucial because it'll be looking at further evidence, including ethnicity data and the demographics of gangs and, of course, their victims, including societal and cultural drivers behind this sort of offending. This is the sort of question that should have been answered by the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse published in 2022. But the 2 weeks they spent on the grooming gang section of one of their strands on organised networks just didn't bring in any experts on this pattern of behaviour and 0 survivors. So finally, we might get some more answers there. There really is a barren area of investigation and academic research and government-led reports into this area. So finally, after many, many years of this being discussed, we might finally get some answers in there. But it's an audit. It's reviewing what's already been looked into. And of course, a big concern we have, Martin, is that many of these police forces and local authorities haven't recorded any ethnicity data. And this tracks very consistently with areas where these abuse gangs are overrepresented against the national average. So it'll be quite difficult to see what Baroness Casey throws up from this audit. It may be the case, Martin, that she shows there's a lot more still to uncover, and perhaps that might embolden the case for a national inquiry. You've heard guests on your programme today saying that this, as we said, it's a sign of they're moving the direction of the government on this issue. Perhaps they are now tiptoeing towards that full national statutory public inquiry.
You know, Charlie, just to be charitable towards what was said today, let's take that point, that just say there is this 3-month full audit, and just say Dame Louise Casey, certainly, if she contacted you, certainly, if she contacted survivors, they would absolutely, without a scintilla of doubt, find that there should be the full movement for that full national inquiry. Do you think that today could offer the hope that at the end of that review period, there could be the political cover for the Labour Party to say, actually, we're listening to Dame Louise Casey, not Charlie Peters, not GB News, not Nigel Farage. It might allow them the wiggle room to get what we want. I'm just trying to be optimistic here.
No, I think you're right, Martin. I think they are tiptoeing towards that position because it's politically untenable for the government to react to this sort of pressure, particularly after we saw the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, almost opening his statement first with a commitment and a word for the survivors, many thousands around the country. But then he moved on to that line from Sir Keir Starmer last Monday, that it was a far-right bandwagon that politicians were jumping on. It's very difficult, I think, for the government in just a space of 10 days to go from taking that position by their leader to then saying, actually, well, we're going to jump on that bandwagon as well. It's just politically impossible. So perhaps with some time, with some months and some further audit, we may see these 5 pilot areas for local reviews, which are given £5 million to be conducted. That may lead to further investigation. But it's a difficult thing for survivors to put their hope and trust in, because the Telford inquiry, this model they're backing, that costs many millions of pounds. £1 million each for each of these areas is concerning. And one final point, Martin, what will those 4 other pilot areas be? You know, Oldham will be one, but will this be another situation where they look in areas where this pattern of abuse hasn't taken place? That's another concern I've heard from survivors and campaigners this afternoon.
Well, it's a huge day in the ongoing pressure towards that full national inquiry. Charlie Peters, once again, thank you for all the work that you've done. Thank you, my friend, once again. Now, loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including the councils cancelling local elections in May. Guess what? They've seen the sharpest rises in illegal immigration. We'll have some astonishing analysis on that next. But first, here's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you very much. Just after 5:30, the top story tonight. Well, far too little action. That is the Home Secretary's damning verdict as she unveiled a new national-level rapid audit of grooming gangs and new local inquiries. Yvette Cooper announced tougher sentences, mandatory reporting and expanded investigations to cover recent cases. The government will also support victim-centred local inquiries in Oldham and in 4 other pilot areas.
Despite all those national inquiries, reports and hundreds of recommendations, far too little action has been taken and shamefully little progress has been made. The most important task should be to increase police investigations into these horrific crimes and get abusers behind bars. We will introduce stronger sentences for child grooming, making it an aggravating factor to organise abuse and exploitation. And I can announce new action today to help victims get more investigations and prosecutions underway.
Well, it comes after weeks of pressure on the government for a new and national inquiry into grooming gangs, with Tory leader Kemi Badenoch, even Elon Musk, saying local probes aren't enough. The Shadow Home Secretary has also slammed the government's plans for just 5 local grooming gang inquiries, saying it's totally inadequate. Speaking earlier in the Commons, Chris Philp said up to 50 towns are affected and questioned why others are being ignored.
Yes, ignored them, and in some cases even covered up these horrendous crimes because of absurd concerns about so-called cultural sensitivity. 10 days ago, the Prime Minister compounded this by saying it was a far-right bandwagon to raise these issues and call for a proper inquiry. Let me say this, it is not far-right to stand up for rape victims.
And in other news tonight, a teenager has been found guilty of murdering the 15-year-old Eliane Andam during a row over a teddy bear in London. Hassan Sentanu stabbed the aspiring lawyer in the neck after stewing over a water-splashing prank just the day before. The court heard the 18-year-old had a history of violence and had brought a knife to the scene to reassert dominance, he said. Eliane's family hugged as the jury convicted him of murder, while Sentanu was seen crying in the dock. He'll be sentenced in March, with police praising Eliane's friends and a bus driver who comforted her in her final moments. Speaking earlier outside the Old Bailey after that sentencing, Detective Becky Woodsford said that Eliane was killed for simply standing up for her friend and doing what she thought was right.
His claim is that he acted through diminished responsibility, and that was never accepted by the prosecution team. And today the jury agreed and they found him guilty of Eliane's murder. We worked together as a team, and during our investigation we've had the opportunity from Michael and Dorcas and Eliane's family to learn what a bright, funny and happy person Eliane was.
Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 6 o'clock, and Martin will be back after this break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Seeing some more mist and fog as we head into the overnight period. Also some outbreaks of rain in the far north, where we're likely to see some quite strong winds, even a risk of gales across the very far north of Scotland, shown quite nicely in the squeeze and the isobars here, but largely across England and Wales, high pressure holding on, which means a largely settled night, though we'll start to see a shift in our wind direction, more of a southerly, and that's going to push all this cloud into northern parts of Wales, northern parts of England as we head into the overnight period. So quite a murky start here. Largely dry, though we could see some drizzly spots around hills, particularly across western parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern Scotland, where it's likely to be quite a damp start to Friday. Fairly mild still in the far northwest, but feeling chillier elsewhere, particularly under any clear spells. So to start on Friday then, quite a damp start across Scotland, particularly in the northwest. Just a chance we could see some drier, clearer spells in the very far east. Similar across Northern Ireland, likely to see a damp start in the far west and perhaps some drizzly outbreaks across northern parts of England too. And still quite a grey start across much of England and Wales as we head into the beginning of Friday. Likely seeing a much cloudier day compared to recent days, but good chance of seeing some breaks in the cloud just to the east of any high ground. But for many, quite a grey and dank day on offer, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, where once again we're set to see that rain and drizzle continue. On the whole, temperatures are widely above average, particularly in the far northwest, where it's going to be very mild for the time of year, but elsewhere temperatures more towards average for the time of year, but feeling slightly cooler than it has done of late. Into the evening, we'll see fairly similar conditions. Once again, plenty of cloud around with the odd clear spell, and we're seeing longer spells of rain and drizzle just start to creep in once again to the very far northwest of Scotland. And as we head into the weekend, still plenty of cloud around, which means temperatures are really going to struggle, so likely feeling chilly for most.
The latest GB News travel. Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Well, starting in Staffordshire, as there are long queues on the northbound carriageway of the M6. Now, the inside lane has been closed since the early hours of this morning from junction 15 and the Stoke-on-Trent area up towards the Keele services. A lorry caught fire and emergency repairs continue. And in the West Midlands, further south on the M42 northbound, one lane stays shut just after junction 6. That's the Birmingham Airport Coventry exit. Of course, a car's broken down of queues back to junction 4, the Shirley-Dorridge exit, and also the Coventry Road very slow towards the M42. Elsewhere in southeast London, the South Circular at Dulwich, that's closed at the scene of an accident at the junction of College Road. And in Somerset, the A361 has been closed on the Froome Road, just south of Road, at the scene of an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back. Time is 5:38 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, last Friday, regular viewers will remember, 9 million votes were cancelled as local councils postponed their local elections. But today, an astonishing new report shows the numbers of illegal immigrants housed in those areas, wait for it, is double the national average. Now, could the elections being cancelled and the huge surge in illegal immigrants in those precise areas, well, could those two events be connected? Well, let's speak now to Robert Bates, who is the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Rob, always a pleasure to have your company. It was bad enough that 9 million votes were cancelled. It was bad enough that counties across the country will be denied the right to vote, to pass judgment perhaps on the government in May. This data you've given to us today at GB News is simply incredible. There's been a huge boom in the numbers of illegal immigrants housed in councils at taxpayers' expense. Tell us the data and tell us the worst offenders.
Yes, enough to make you want to weep, really. Obviously, the fact that 9 million people are being disenfranchised is bad enough, but we're repeatedly told that local elections are about bins and they're about potholes. I would argue that what we were going to see in May was those council areas that since 2021 have seen a huge uplift in the number of illegal migrants being housed in their area at taxpayers' expense. We're finally going to get the chance to pass verdict on the impact that that's had on their local communities, and the fact that they have been cancelled, I feel, is politicians shirking their obligations to give the voters the chance to pass verdict. You look at some of the worst offenders across the country. We have Essex, which has increased by 700% since 2021, the number of asylum seekers that are being housed in hotels and temporary accommodation, which is often social housing. We have places like Warwick, which has seen a 400% increase in the number of asylum seekers being housed, and Worcestershire 917. We have Devon at 4,400. You know, these are very, very significant increases that have a really, really significant detrimental impact on the quality of life of people living in these areas. And I think the fact that the government has allowed councils to run away from facing the wrath of voters is really, really telling. And the fact that so many Conservative-led councils have taken that opportunity and said, you know what, we really, really messed up on illegal migration over the last 5 years, but we're not going to give you the chance to tell us what you really think, is absolutely scandalous.
What's astonishing about all of this is that not only does nobody have a say, nobody's consulted about how many illegal immigrants are stuffed into their community. Furthermore, it gets worse. They pay. And they don't only pay nationwide on a council tax level. Council tax. The council tax bill is going towards housing illegal immigrants in an area where nobody ever got a say. And in these 12 authorities, you've done the data, by the way, impressive data as ever from you, Rob Bates, a 344% increase on average across these 12 areas. More than treble the previous year. Nobody was consulted, nobody's had a say, and when they got chance of a say, democracy has been booted down the road.
It's incredibly disempowering. It's incredibly disempowering. And as you say, you know, the costs that the taxpayers are having to fork out to house these people, the pressures that are being put on dentists and doctors' surgeries as well is going to affect the quality of life in people in these areas. And I think what we really have reached here is a situation where politicians are so far removed from the British public's concerns that they really, really can't comprehend that people might feel aggrieved that their democratic absolutely right to pass verdict on a huge, huge change to their communities is being completely swerved. These 12 councils are above average in terms of what the offence that they've committed in allowing the numbers of illegal migrants in their areas. The national average across the whole of the UK is a 177% increase since 2021 between December 21 and September 24. These areas have seen, as you say, a 344% increase, so they're twice as bad as the rest of the country. And the fact that they're avoiding any democratic accountability is a huge scandal.
Now, Rob Bates, you don't have to be Poirot. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes or even a conspiracy theorist to simply rule your finger over these numbers and go, hang on a minute. They've cancelled the elections in the places where this factor is the worst. And people will rightly start to think, is this deliberate? Is there some sort of movement going on here? Because are the councillors going, oh, my God, do you know what? If we actually do go to the electorate, we're going to get a pasting. It's best we try and kick this down the road.
So, look, over the last 5 years, we've seen some councils, a very small number of councils, try and fight back against the Home Office and the imposition of large numbers of undocumented, unvetted, largely males in communities. But there have been very few and far between. These areas have had no pushback. They've done absolutely nothing to stand up for the interests of the people they are meant to represent. These councillors have really shirked their obligations to those people that put them in place in the first place. And now they're turning around and saying, we messed up, we haven't done anything, but we're not going to let you pass judgment on us.
I speak to people all the time on this show, Rob Bates, friends of mine, they've become friends of mine now. Places like Rushmore, where they find out, by accident almost, or they find out at an emergency council meeting that a block of flats has been hoovered up by the local authority, flats that their kids can't even afford. Or they find out that hotels in the area are being occupied by asylum seekers, nobody consulted them, and when they go to the council to find out, they go, oh, it wasn't our fault, it was the Home Office. They forced it on us. Well, OK, so we go to the Home Office. They go, oh, it wasn't our fault. It was Serco's fault. Serco, who's bought all the houses up. It's like, so the buck gets passed around. And by the way, we're all bankrolling that. Now, of course, central government will say, well, we have to house people somewhere. We have an obligation to do so. But the point of the matter is, go back to the beginning, and that is we don't have adequate border control. So, of course, they're getting foisted on communities where they're not being consulted and they don't want them. But the problem is, until we take control of our borders, this problem will never, ever go away.
This is all downstream, as you say, from the fact that we don't have a proper deterrent at the moment. And as we see, figures out over the last couple of days, another couple of hundred people coming across the channel, the fact that we don't have any deterrent in place and these people feel no fears at all about making that crossing. They feel no qualms about effectively undermining the sovereignty of British borders, and they're then able to enter the UK, be put up in accommodation, have their asylum application processed for far too long. It should really be a case of no, yes. These processes are dragged out far too long. And then even when people are told that they're not a legitimate asylum seeker and that they have no right to stay in the UK, they stay for weeks, months at a time, and sometimes even years. These are people that we have passed verdict on and said, we don't think your claim is legitimate. We're not going to allow you to stay in the UK, but yet they stay for huge periods of time as well after that. And so you have to think, no wonder there is a huge backlog and pressure on accommodation, on hotels, because we're simply not removing those people that shouldn't be here.
Rob Bates, once again, astonishing data. I would say thank you, but it makes my blood boil. But thank you for bringing it to our attention here on GB News. Rob Bates, of course, from the Centre for Migration Control. Always a pleasure. Thank you very, very much. Now we have a right to reply. And a spokesperson for Essex County Council says this: any allegation of a link between asylum numbers and a request to postpone elections is complete and utter nonsense. OK, well, a lot of people might say it's complete and utter nonsense that there's been a 712% increase in Essex of illegal immigrants and nobody was ever consulted. Let's fight fire with fire. There's some nonsense straight back at you. Now, next, do you kiss your dog? If so, you might be in line for a case of super salmonella. Enjoy your tea. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Have you noticed that more and more stores are closing? Well, last year, apparently 13,000 stores closed for the last time on the high street.
Well, experts warn the worst is still to come for our small businesses.
Well, let's talk to retail expert Jeremy Baker. Good morning to you, Jeremy. How bad is it and what can be done?
Well, nothing can be done about it. Retail is like that. It's a boom and bust operation. So last year, let's say you had a shop and it was booming. This year, the consumer can just change their mind. They don't need to come back to your shop ever again.
Well, it is sad, Jeremy, because our high streets are the beating heart of our communities, aren't they? And for many people, I know I can relate to my high street, it is such a depressing sight, walking down there and seeing them all boarded up and closed down.
But how often do you walk down the boarded up high street? I think people move on to something else. The online world is very big. Yeah. And lots of other things are very exciting. And so people, you know, the shop, I like to go to my GP in a shopping centre and get my tests done there rather than tramp off all the way to the GP, for example. And children could go to little schools in the high street. I've seen that happen already. So lots of things could happen to the high street. It could be much more a social centre. Much more kind of like pubs, coffee shops, all that. Charities. I don't see anything wrong with charities taking over, but the idea of the shop-centred high street finished, that's gone, never coming back. Goodbye. It's not sad, it's just life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
I mean, the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's approaching 10 to 6 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, in lighter news, or is it? Could kissing your dog be risking your health? Well, the traitor star Claudia Winkleman has raised eyebrows and perhaps turned even a few stomachs by admitting that she not only kisses her dog, but she uses tongues. Now, do you kiss your dog? And if so, be warned, you might be in line for a dose of super salmonella. Hope you're enjoying your fish and chip supper. Now, join us now is the dog behaviour expert, Nancy Creedon. Nancy, welcome to the show. You're a dog expert. You got a dog there. Well, let's start with the obvious question. Do you kiss your dog? And if so, do you buy a drink first?
I do not kiss him. He kisses me, OK? I consent, but he kisses me.
OK, so, I mean, it's... Look, I see people do it all the time. I'm a cat owner myself. When my kids kiss my cat, I've said, hey, have you seen where he's just been licking? You might want to be careful about kissing him because, let's face it, once removed, you can probably guess the rest of this conversation. Sorry once out there again if you're enjoying your fish fingers and chips at the moment. On a serious point, it does carry risks, doesn't it? But are they risks like all the risks in life that we should just say it's part of life?
I mean, unless we're going to start washing in bleach, we need to calm down. I've worked with dogs for 20 years. I've never once heard of anyone getting salmonella from kissing their dog or from their dog kissing them. And at the end of the day, some of them are sleeping in our bed. Some people are sharing meals with their dogs. So at this stage, if we feel like everything to do with dogs is set up to murder us, we're not going to have pet dogs. It's not fair. Now, what I would say, though, and where we should be careful is consent. And that's going to sound really, really silly, but I see it day in, day out in my line of work that when we do things to dogs that they don't consent to, we do see an increase in bites. So going towards the dog's face. Yeah, because the thing...
How do you get consent from a dog to kiss it?
The reason that we're asking this question is baffling to me, because when you understand dogs, you can read their body language. So a dog approaching, a dog moving forward, a dog wanting to engage in an interaction, is the dog consenting to it? A dog that's sitting there, lying down, doing their own thing, then the kids go over, grab them, push their faces in their faces. Like, that dog may not necessarily want that interaction. And I do see people kissing their dogs without the dog's consent all the time, including tongues. So we do definitely need to respect what the dogs are saying.
Nancy, this is all great. This theory is great. I think it's time for you to give us a demonstration. Show us how you get a consensual kiss from a dog. Come on, this will make great telly.
Ask Bear. You need to ask Bear, does he want? Do you want to give me a kiss? Bear. No, see, he doesn't. So if he doesn't want to, I'm not going to force him to. Bear, you want to look at me? Do you want to give me a kiss? Good boy. And the thing is, he didn't necessarily to do that. He did that for me. But we do need to make sure that we're not pushing our faces into dogs' faces, because they don't generally like that.
That was more of a peck. That wasn't a kiss. You can do better than that. Go on, ask for consent again.
No. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to touch tongues with my dog. That's not the line of interaction we go with. But at the end of the day, when he wants an interaction, if he wants a cuddle, if he wants to give me kisses, as much as, you know, him licking my feet for 10 minutes is disgusting, it makes him happy. I consent to him doing that. I don't do it back to him, though. I promise you that much.
Yeah, we can see pictures on screen. Is that consensual? Can you see that on screen there? Look, that's a kiss on the snout.
Throwing the dog in front of a load of photographers and all that is going to be stressful. Like, I critique everything I see. That's not so bad. Roy Keane, we're not going to give it about Roy Keane. He's from Cork. We stick up for Roy Keane. But we do just need to be aware that, yes, kissing your dogs, interacting with your dogs, being up close to your dogs is enjoyable, but just double check. Give the dog a bit of space. Invite them to do it. If they don't do it, that means they're not consenting, so leave them off.
OK, Nancy, I've got some comments coming from the readers about this topic, and Paul says this: kissing dogs, that's disgusting. Sharon says, I kiss my dog on the head every day. Well, at least keep it to the head. Linda says, it's fine to kiss your dog. A bit of bacteria never did anyone any harm. I've got to say, though, my final point is I say to my kids all the time, as I said, you know, have you seen where it's just been kissing? And I won't use this as a visual prop, but I think you get the message. You've got to be careful where dogs kiss first, because that sure as mustard gets passed on to you. And once again, I have to apologise to the great British public there for putting off your egg and chips. Superb fun, Nancy Creedon, thank you. And my career just hits further highs. I just got a consensual kissing session of how to kiss your dog. Superb stuff. Now, light and shade on today's show. The grooming gang scandal goes on. Do you think we're getting nearer towards resolution? No doubt. That'll be discussed next on Jubes & Co. with Michelle Dewberry. I'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thanks for your company. It's been a superb show. Now, have a great evening. Now, here's time for your weather. Thank you.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Seeing some more mist and fog as we head into the overnight period. Also some outbreaks of rain in the far north, where we're likely to see some quite strong winds, even a risk of gales across the very far north of Scotland, shown quite nicely in the squeeze and the isobars here, but largely across England and Wales, high pressure holding on, which means a largely settled night, though we'll start to see a shift in our wind direction, more of a southerly, and that's going to push all this cloud into northern parts of Wales, northern parts of England as we head into the overnight period. So quite a murky start here. Largely dry, though we could see some drizzly spots around hills, particularly across western parts of Northern Ireland, northwestern Scotland, where it's likely to be quite a damp start to Friday. Fairly mild still in the far northwest, but feeling chillier elsewhere, particularly under any clear spells. So to start on Friday then, quite a damp start across Scotland, particularly in the northwest. Just a chance we could see some drier, clearer spells in the very far east. Similar across Northern Ireland, likely to see a damp start in the far west, and perhaps some drizzly outbreaks across northern parts of England too. And still quite a grey start across much of England and Wales as we head into the beginning of Friday. Likely seeing a much cloudier day compared to recent days.